Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
Zach, let me make sure I get this right. So you're 23 and you've got 100 rentals?
Yep, that's right.
Did you have any partners that helped you do this?
I've got a few properties with a partner, but 90% of it or so is just me.
Did you have a bunch of family money when you got started, or did you win the lottery or something?
Nope, I just sort of figured out the creative finance world and the real estate financing world and kept kind of scaling the business and trying to learn new things.
Zach started buying rental properties 2 years ago when he was 21 years old. And today he's got over 100 doors. And on the show today, we're going to figure out how he did it. Joining us on the show from Lynchburg, Virginia is Zach Shepard. We'll take a quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll talk to Zach. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property. And when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Are you thinking about investing in rental properties, but maybe you don't know where to start? My friends at Mid-South Home Buyers make it simple. For over 23 years, they've been selling fully renovated turnkey rental properties in Memphis and Little Rock. We're talking new roofs, plumbing, electric, kitchens, bathrooms. Everything is brand new and done right. And here's the best part. Every property comes with a well-qualified tenant in place before you close. That means you get cash flow from day one. Plus, Mid-South continues to professionally manage the property for you after the sale, and they back it up with 2 powerful guarantees. You get a 1-year total maintenance warranty and a lifetime occupancy guarantee. Personally, I've bought 5 properties from them, and I couldn't be happier. If you want to talk to someone that's been through the process, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you're ready to get started, just go to midsouthhomebuyers.com. That's midsouthhomebuyers.com. Zach, let's start things off talking about your portfolio. So you've got 100 units. What is that comprised of?
Yeah, totally. So just over 100 units now. Just bought a 4-plex yesterday. But it's a mix of multifamily, single family, and some mobile home parks, a little bit of commercial. I have a billboard. So it's kind of a little bit of everything, but the bread and butter, the most thing I focus the most on is long-term rentals.
And everything is in the same area?
Yep. It's all within 40 minutes of me.
What are the neighborhoods like?
I've got some that are in Class A neighborhoods, some that are in Class B and Class C as well. And then certainly the mobile home parks are kind of their own little neighborhoods. So it's kind of a mixture. I'd say I focus more heavily on the lower income neighborhoods in our area because that's where I'm able to find more profit, and I'm willing to deal with the headaches that come with that to reap the upside that also comes with those parts of town.
Do A-class properties cash flow? A lot of times those properties, they're easy to manage, but they're just hard to make money on. Do your A-class properties produce positive cash flow?
They do. I don't buy anything that doesn't produce positive cash flow, but I have a much smaller portion of A class than, low B and high C, and mid B class properties.
And how old are the properties that you're buying?
Some of them are late 1800s. Some of them are probably the newest ones are in the 50s. So I'm buying mostly older stuff, but I kind of like the older construction and enjoy the architecture of the older homes as well.
And are most of your properties rehabs? Like, are you buying them and fixing them up, or are they kind of rent ready when you buy them?
Yeah, most of them are rehabs, just because that's how I'm able to get good enough deals to build cash flow. So obviously, managing a rehab and putting in some sweat equity helps build equity. And so I'm able to get into a property for the right amount in order to be able to get the property to cash flow.
Now you've got a big portfolio. I mean, are you doing this all yourself, or do you have any people helping you out?
I definitely have a lot of help. I've got about 15 or 20 guys on the construction side that work for me mostly full time. And then I've got two guys that help me with the management side, Brian and Adam, super awesome guys. And so I've kind of been able to build a team of people, and we all kind of are chasing the same thing, which is to help improve our community and provide housing for people. I have a partner on about a dozen units, and then the rest of them I own just me, but I certainly wouldn't be able to do this without the help of all the investors that invest in my business, and the employees that I employ, and the wholesalers and agents and everybody who kind of brings me deals.
So you're 23 right now. How long have you been doing this for?
So I first got into real estate about 3 years ago, bought my first house. I didn't buy another house for about a year. I got married in that time and kind of built up a bit of a contractor business, handyman business. And then 2 years ago is when I bought my second property. And then I bought four more right after that. And then really decided, I was going to try to scale this bigger than I was thinking prior to that. And that was 2 years ago. And this is kind of where we are now.
Wow. All right. So in just about 2 years, you've bought over 100 properties.
Over 100 units. Yeah.
100
correct.
units. Wow. All right. So how did you figure this out? I mean, that is like just really incredible. I mean, taking your age out of it, but figuring out how to buy that many properties in that short of a time, like how did you figure that out, or figure out how to do this?
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to it. I would say a few pieces are, number one is I'm pretty intentional about goal setting. So the year that I bought 5 houses, my goal that year was to buy 3. And I ended up buying more than I thought I could buy. And when I said 3, I was okay if one of them was a mobile home in a mobile home park and somebody else owned the land. I just wanted to figure out a way to get into the rental business. And so I ended up buying 5 standalone houses. And so the next year I was like, well, I need to think bigger. And so I set a goal to buy 8 to 12, and I ended up buying 14. And that was about a year ago. I had 20 units a year ago. And I was goal setting last December, and I was thinking, okay, where do I want the business to go? Obviously I want to grow something big, because I just really enjoy getting to employ a lot of people, provide housing to a lot of people, and create something that will hopefully one day have some positive influence in our community. And so I was kind of thinking last December, where do I want to take this? What do I want to do for my goal for this year, 2025? And so I was thinking, well, maybe I'll buy 30 units. And then I was like, I think I can do more than that. Maybe I'll try to do 50, which is a bit crazy. And then I read Grant Cardone's book, The 10X Rule, which he's a bit of a meme, but he's exactly right. And his principle of this book is make your goal so big it seems really hard, and then chase after it, which I had done in years past, but 100 units just seemed crazy. So I set a goal this year to buy 100 units. Told my wife about it a year ago, and she said, I think you can do it. And that was about all I needed. And I just sort of started planning and trying to work towards that. And so far bought about 83 units, and I'm under contract on another 45, some of which will close this year, some of which will close next year. So I would say probably the biggest piece is a mix of two things. It's goal setting, which is really important to me. I learned that when I was in sales, which is what I did before having my own business. And then in order to achieve those goals, I set high goals, and then I bite off a little more than I can chew, and then I figure out how to chew it. Not in a stupid way where you take on all this, more debt than you can handle and more projects than you can handle, but to try to take a project that you're like, I've never done that before. I don't know how to do that, but I'm not going to let myself fail. And I'm pretty sure I can come out the other side and do well with it. So, and to bite off more than I can chew each time. And it, eventually leads to compounding growth. So
were your parents involved in real estate? I mean, just to have the mindset that you have at such a young age, I think is really impressive. Like where did that come from?
Yeah, I appreciate that. My mom actually is who I found out about the Rental Income podcast through. They haven't had any rental property yet, but I think they will probably one day. But my dad's a business owner and a really hard worker. And I credit, almost everything I have today to my dad, because he was so intentional as he was raising me and my brothers to teach us practical skills and to teach us how to work, and to teach us about tax write-offs, and to teach us about accounting, and to teach us about very little bits and some things, a whole bunch of different areas. But the most important skill I think that he gave me was just hands-on construction experience. I kind of grew up in the construction world because my dad did as well, and he taught me a whole bunch of stuff. And so I was able to leverage that to get into the real estate business. And without that, I don't know. I mean, I would have been super hard to try to do what I'm doing now because I was able to be the one swinging the hammer and to then employ people and be their manager and to know exactly how it should be done and teach them, anything that they might need to know in order to do it. So I would say I credit so much of, what the Lord has blessed me with, giving me parents who were just super intentional to teach practical skills that allow you to go into business and take some risks and feel like you'll come out the other side because you have the skills needed to make it happen.
Now, what about money? Like, I think coming up with the money to get started is the hardest part for people. Like, how did you do it? How did you get the money to do this?
Yeah, this is probably one of the most exciting pieces of real estate to me. And I met this, I basically, when I started in real estate, I took networking very seriously because I wasn't very good in school. So I lived by the maxim. It's not the grades you make, it's the hands you shake. And I dropped out of college, went into sales. I learned a lot about that. And then when I started my own business 3 years ago, I decided to make networking in the real estate space a priority. And so through that, I met this gentleman named Abe, who was a little bit older than me, probably twice my age. And he at one point had 14 rental units, which is a pretty substantial portfolio. And at the time was really, I was pretty impressed by it. And he was actually getting out of the business because he had another business that was doing well and he wanted to invest in that. And Abe had a house he was interested in selling. And what somebody did for Abe when he got started in the real estate business is they owner financed him and helped him figure out, creative finance. And they helped him figure out a way to buy a bunch of property, zero down. And when you find a retiring real estate investor who somebody did that for them, they would love the opportunity to get the bottom dollar they need on their property, but to help a younger guy start and do so without having to put $50,000 down on a property. And so Abe opened my eyes to the world of creative finance and helped me see that you don't need cash to put down on a property in order to buy a property. You do need reserves. You shouldn't do this, with no money. But you don't necessarily have to be the one that's putting the down payment on a property. And so through putting sweat equity into a property, increasing its value, and using a seller credit at a local bank, I was able to buy my first investment property that I didn't live in without any money out of pocket. And I got $7,000 back at the closing table.
So is that kind of the model that you've followed, that you've bought properties from other investors and done seller financing?
I've done a lot of that. I think there's a misnomer in the real estate space, and it's that you can't get good deals from investors because they know what they have. That's sort of true. There's also sort of not true, because when a property needs work, oftentimes it's a real estate investor who knows how much work it really needs. And so if you can find an investor who's willing to be reasonable with you, I've found a lot of success from just buying property that other people are trying to get out of for various reasons, working out a deal that works for both parties, still cash flows, still has equity. And they're willing to be sort of creative on the financing side of things.
So it's not that you saved a bunch of money, you didn't have large down payments, you've just networked with the right people and made deals happen.
Yeah, I would say probably 90% of what I've purchased, I've done zero down or pretty close to.
How did you find the people that you've bought properties from and that have helped you along the way?
Just through networking in the real estate space. I love people and love getting to know people. And I enjoy getting to know other investors. And I've learned everything I've been able to do has been, on the shoulders of other people who have been willing to give me their advice. And so in that, just, you meet people and you find that you've got a mutual way you can help each other out. They're looking to offload a property. I'm looking to buy a property. And there you have it. There's a deal. And it's more than just deal finding too. There's, I've raised, probably a few million dollars of private capital, from other investors. And, some of them are buddies of mine. Some of them are, retired business people. Some of them are, just various people who are interested in getting a decent return on their money. That has also just been from getting to know other people in the real estate space. So I think there's just a lot of value in getting to know people in your industry. Because you find pretty quickly that you have things that you both can help each other out with and create win-wins for both parties.
And I think that's really the great thing with real estate is it's probably the only industry where most investors don't look at other investors as the competition.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're all kind of in this together and we're all working together. And I think that's great that you've found the right people. Now with the private money that you've raised, what have you done with that?
I use that pretty much exclusively as short-term debt. There's some private capital that I have that's long-term. Like I bought a single wide trailer on an acre for $30,000, and I have $45,000 into it because I fixed it up, and it rents for $900 a month. So that one I have long-term private capital on. I pay the guy 10% per month on it, which is a high interest rate, but the single wide trailers just cash flow really well. So some of it's long-term. The bulk of the private capital that I've been able to pull together has been for BRRRRs. It's been for buying houses that need work, fixing them up, and then I refinance out of it and pay the investor his money back and do it again.
Okay. So now, without having cash that you're putting into deals, mm-hmm. where it's mainly buying properties under market value, maybe sometimes fixing them up. Do you ever get concerned that maybe you're too highly leveraged?
Yeah, I try to be conservative enough to, what I say is I try to be aggressive enough to grow, but conservative enough to grow safely. So I kind of like a 70% debt position, 30% equity position. And so I try to have cash in the bank and equity in property, and build equity through fixing up property. So I'm not just like leveraging a property 100% and getting a owner finance note at 100% on a bunch of deals and getting in zero down with no equity. The bulk of what I'm doing is buying stuff that needs a bunch of work. I've rebuilt numerous foundations. I've, done guts on properties. I've, got a bunch of properties that we're rehabbing right now. So the bulk of what I've done is buy stuff that someone's lived in for a long time. It's been torn apart. The only thing they could do is list it on the market and hope somebody buys it or sell it off market to an investor, and then fix those up and basically hold those properties as rentals is what I do. Then on top of that, I do a little bit of flipping as well. And then I also try to have some paid off property too. So my leverage position isn't everything's mortgaged. It's a majority's mortgage, but you have some that's cash, so that if you need to sell something quickly or you need money quickly, you can either do a quick refinance or a quick sale, so that you're not just overly leveraged and not being safe enough to be able to grow a business responsibly and effectively.
Now, I mean, obviously you're very well spoken. You really seem to understand what you're doing here. I can tell you're a good investor, but when you're working with tenants, do they ever look at you and think, oh, this is a young guy, he doesn't know what he's doing? Like, has that been a problem at all?
I haven't really run into that much. Occasionally, I think sometimes tenants don't know I'm the owner and they think I'm just a young guy that works for the company. Mm-hmm. And I don't, go around saying I'm not the owner, but right. I don't also go around saying I am the owner. But early on, everybody knew I was the owner, and I don't really think about that very much. I had a sales job for a few years that kind of kicked that out of me. I was nervous that I was selling a product to people who are 2 or 3 times my age. And my boss at the time helped me be like, just stop. Like, there's no reason. You're an adult. Just stop. It's fine.
Right.
And so I then just stopped worrying about it and stopped thinking about it. And people stopped asking me how young I was, because I stopped, walking into things nervous that I was young. Yeah. And I think also, this is kind of more philosophical, but in the history of the world, we as a culture prolong youth much longer than most cultures in the past have. And you think of the great men of hundreds of years ago, and so many of them were in their 20s. That's and true. Did things that changed the world. So I think also, I don't really think of that as necessarily a hindrance for what I'm doing.
I agree. I mean, I think thinking you're too young or too old, that's all in your head. So mm-hmm. I think you're looking at that right. Well, let's take a look at one of your deals. Tell me about this property.
Yeah. So the deal I've selected, it's in the downtown part of my town. It's a historic 1885 property. It's beautifully renovated. A friend of mine had it. He bought it for 190 a couple years ago, and he's more interested in flipping than rentals, which is one of the beautiful things about the real estate industry is there's so many avenues people can go. And so he ended up selling it to me for 205, which is, hardly more than he had in it. But I think it would probably appraise for like 265 or so. So it's not a smoking hot deal where I'm fixing it up and adding equity, which is most of what I do. But he's willing to sell it at about 20, 22, 23% off, something like that. So, or 25% off, something like that. So I purchased this property with the intent to refinance into long-term debt. So I'm basically doing a BRRRR. But what I did with it is I talked with him, about how I could probably buy it at 190 or below 200 and use hard money and make it make sense and refinance out of it. Or I could pay him a bit higher of a number if he's willing to owner finance and offer it as a subject to the existing mortgage, which I've done a few of those. I don't love subject to, but in certain circumstances, I like it. So I purchased this property. I put $3,000 into it as the closing cost, bought it for 205. He's carrying a mortgage on it in second position. And then also I'm buying it subject to his existing debt. And all I'm going to do is just refinance it. I have the appraisal later today at 240. And so I'll go there. We'll have the appraisal and I'll refinance right out of it. And I'll be able to get a property that rents for $2,400 a month for $205,000, which is better than 1% rule, which is typically how I like to buy where interest rates are, and zero down.
And the property didn't need any work?
No, it's beautiful. Most of the stuff I buy needs a lot of work. Some of it when I buy it, it's quite junky, and then me and my team fix it up. But this property specifically just happens to be really pretty. It's a old historic property and is in good shape.
Is this a single family or a duplex?
It's a duplex.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So $2,400 is the rent.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the mortgage payment right now?
Yeah. Right now, I think it's probably $1,500 or something like that, because it's short-term owner finance debt, which I don't really care for the interest rate as much when it's shorter term debt because I'm going to refinance out of it. But once the refinance goes through, it'll probably be $1,300 or something like that a month, including taxes and insurance.
Okay, so you've got about $900 cash flow on that after you pay the mortgage.
Correct. Yep.
Now, with most people, if they have a couple of rental properties, I think it's a good idea to budget money on that property's cash flow for any repairs or things that come up. But with you having so many properties, I'm sure you have a lot of positive cash flow. So like, how do you budget for repairs and for expenses that are going to come up?
Yeah. That's a good question. When I started in the business, if something happened that was a $500 expense, it was a big deal because I had one or two properties and I didn't have a lot of money. As it grew, a year in, if something happened that was a $4,000 expense, it was a big deal. But anything, a couple thousand or a few hundred was not a big deal. As you add more zeros to the end of our portfolio, oh no, this is a problem, that number starts to grow because you have more cash flow coming in. So I keep, a healthy amount in the bank account as reserves. I also try to have equity in property if I need to get out of something. And all of my cash flow goes back into my reserves, back into my bank account. And some of it's used as operating funds. And, basically when you get a large enough portfolio, I have one guy who is a W-2 employee for me. All he does is maintenance on properties pretty much all week long. Sometimes he has a light week, sometimes he has a heavy week, but all he does is maintenance. So that money that if you had 5 properties, you'd be putting in a bank account waiting for the water heater to go out. It's all going into our operating account because every month, we might have a water heater or a plumbing issue. And, every month we have an electrical issue somewhere. And every month there's this or there's a roof issue. So there's enough property where the CapEx and the repairs and maintenance is just always an expense. And so it's always something I account for.
So how many properties did you get to where having a big expense wasn't a big deal? It was just kind of a normal day. Like, was there a certain number of properties that you got to where the maintenance wasn't a big problem anymore?
It was never really a big problem because when I first started, I did all the work myself. Again, going back to I kind of grew up in the construction space. So when I first started, I did all the work myself. So I only had a big problem if I couldn't fix it myself. And the amount of things I couldn't fix myself were very small. And then as it grew, I started to add more zeros, and then I had people working for me. So I wasn't anymore fixing it myself, but there was enough. I couldn't fix it myself because there was so much property. But the other side of that is there's so much property I can afford to pay somebody else to fix it. So I never really had a big issue with maintenance. I've never had a maintenance issue come up that really spooked me. Most of that's because when it was small scale, I could do it myself. And now that it's larger scale, we have the funds to hire people to do it.
So where do you see yourself going with this? I mean, in 2 years, you've got 100 properties. When we talk in 5 years or 10 years, how many properties do you think you'll have?
I have no idea. Obviously, I'm pretty intentional with goal setting, but I don't know exactly what it looks like. I would love to become one of the best and one of the biggest real estate investment companies in my area. And I love the idea of business for the influence you can have on a community, and for the lives you can affect, the people you rent to, the people you employ, all of those types of things. And I also love that I live in a town that's growing pretty substantially, but has a lot of dilapidated houses. So I get to be a part of revitalizing our downtown community by buying houses and fixing them up. So I don't know exactly where this goes, but I hope to continue to be able to grow it and continue to be able to employ more people and provide more housing for more people.
Zach is definitely off to a great start with his investing, and it's going to be fun to see how far he can take this. We'll be sure to check in with him at some point down the road. Well, if Zach inspired you and you're ready to buy your first property or you want to add to your portfolio, reach out to our sponsor, Chaley Ridge. She's a nationwide lender. She's got a ton of different loan programs, and she can find something that works for you. If you want to track her down, you can find her at ridgelendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. Make sure you hit that follow button. I put out a new episode every single Tuesday, and if you're following the show, you'll get notified when the next episode comes out. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.